This is the Clear Money Talk podcast, offering up creative solutions for your retirement future through education, choice, transparency, and empathy. Now, your host, CEO and founder of Clear Financial Partners, Tim Clairmont, and co-host, Tyler Andrews.
Hello. Welcome to Clear Money Talk. My name is Tim Clairmont, the CEO and founder of Clear Financial Partners, your host, and as always, here with me is the lustrous, wondrous, amazing, marathon achieving Tyler Andrews.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah,
you can keep going.
I know. I had a feeling you just
the accolades.
Yeah,
I'm very humble at my core, but it's nice to hear it every once in a while. And listeners, thanks for tuning in. Tim and I are excited for another episode of Clear Money Talk, where we try to bring relevant financial topics to you guys for your listening pleasure, and hopefully we're able to leave you after the podcast smarter than when you showed up. But nonetheless, hopefully it's at least some good enjoyment for you at the end of the day.
There you go. That's right. We want to teach you something smart about money. So glad you're tuning in. Hopefully you're going to learn many things that are smart about money today. Again, I have no idea what the topic is, as is always the case. So I'm excited to find out what we'll be talking about. So
absolutely. You ready to jump in?
What are we talking about today,
All right.
Tyler?
Topic of the day. Are you planning for retirement or just hoping it works out?
Oh, okay.
Are you planning for retirement or hoping it just works out?
Oh, so this is the call out episode. So it's like we're calling you out. It's like if you don't have a plan, you're just hoping it works out. And if you have a plan, then you're actually planning for retirement. So interesting. We'll be curious. And I suppose there's varying degrees of plans. Like, you
absolutely.
Probably have a scalability of it's on a scale of 0 to 10. I'm thinking about 0 as you're just like really hoping it works out. You have zero plan. You've given it zero thought, and crossing your fingers and maybe relying on Social Security to take care of you. And a 10 being you're completely dialed. Every ounce of the plan, everything's been given consideration to. And maybe as you think about this episode, where are you on that spectrum? Are you a 0? Are you a 10? Are you somewhere in between? And maybe if you're below a 5, there's probably some more work to do that could really move the needle for you. And, if you're between a 7 and a 10, there might be some minor adjustments that could be made, but you don't know what you don't know. So anyway, that's the way I'm framing it in my mind. Let's see where we want to go today. What's the outline stuff
I think that's great. You ready for the outline, and we'll go through each one?
Yeah.
Okay. So the talking points I thought would make sense to go through is the difference between saving and planning. I think a lot of people are doing a great job saving, and they're doing their best to do that, but there is definitely a key difference between saving and planning. So I'm excited to talk about that with you, Tim.
Okay.
That will lead us naturally into income planning. So how that ties into retirement. You have to actually plan for income, where to draw from, what to draw from first, second, third, fourth, et cetera. How that applies to your situation. Taxes in retirement. This is often huge. I know that you're probably just itching to start talking about taxes, as we all know. That's a huge factor when it comes to retirement income. Healthcare and long-term care planning, RMDs and withdrawal strategies, legacy planning, and then why hope is not a strategy. So you can't just say, well, I'm hoping it works out, or that's not the strategy, and we'll talk about why that isn't the best strategy.
You can say we hope it just works out. It's just let's be self-honest and say that's not a strategy.
Correct.
So that's fair.
And I'm excited about this podcast, Tim, especially because obviously we specialize in retirement income planning. That's one of the core focuses of what we do. But we also, I feel like, have other Clear Money Talk episodes about all these kind of different topics. We have other episodes about taxes and retirement. We have other episodes about healthcare and long-term care, and other episodes about RMDs and withdrawal strategies. So I feel like this episode will do a good job of tying together a bunch of different Clear Money Talk episodes we've recorded in the past. So I'm excited to tie that all together with you.
At the same time, in the interest of brevity for all of you who are probably sitting here wondering, how are you going to cover that in the 20 minutes or 30 minutes that you've already picked on when you click this particular episode, or is this going to be an hour and a half long episode for us to try? It's not going to be an hour and a half long. So we're gonna have to cover some of these things in a more cursory fashion, knowing that you can dive deeper into those elements in some of our previous Clear Money Talk episodes. So
absolutely.
So if you like one of these topics, you want to hear more about what we say and really unpack it, there's a good chance one of our previous episodes has a lot more to say on that particular topic. There's a couple things on here that didn't end up on the bullet list that I was thinking about that are kind of related to this planning thing. One is are you plan? I get it's not so much retirement, but when you're thinking RMDs and you're thinking about your beneficiaries, I'm thinking about the estate planning ramifications, and I guess it goes outside the scope of planning versus hoping. But just realize that the government, if taxes is an issue for you or a concern for you, the government is going to take a bite out of your retirement income, and they're going to take a bite out of your estate. If they're the Oregon Department of Revenue, at least in the state of Oregon, is going to take a bite out of your estate if you have over $2 million, and that includes the equity in your property or properties, as well as your retirement balances, including the pre-tax IRA accounts and 401k accounts you might have, as well as your life insurance and death benefits. So you got to add all that stuff together and say, is that over $2 million if you're married, or $1 million if you're single? And if it is, the Oregon Department of Revenue is going to take a bite out of that as well. So, anyway, that's probably all I'll say on the estate tax issues. And other than that, we'll stick to the agenda. I'm sure some more thoughts will pop up as well. So.
They naturally will, as they always do. So, Tim, let's talk about the difference between saving and planning.
Sure.
I think a lot of people have retirement accounts. A lot of people are saving to retirement accounts, and they feel like, I'm doing an awesome job of saving, which you are. I don't want to belittle that by any means, but
well, not all of you are. But
that's true. If you're not saving and you feel like you should,
are, you probably are. If you believe you aren't, you probably aren't.
Exactly. So maybe we can talk about why saving isn't necessarily having a plan and kind of knowing your number, if you will.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a helpful target for people when they are saving to try to achieve.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, if you think about it, it's like I think of somebody, using a bow and arrow at an archery range. You might be flinging arrows out there at the field because that's what you're doing, saving, but you have no targets at all. You have no idea where the arrows are going or what they're hitting. Are you too far? Are you too close? Are you on target at all? You're basically at an empty field, flinging arrows out, shooting arrows at the empty field. And that's what saving is. When you're planning, you go out, you put that target in place, and you're aiming for it. You have something you're shooting for, and right where you're at as far as how good of a job are you doing. Are you in the third ring or the second ring, or are you just outside the rings but still on the target, or are you hitting the bullseye? And that's planning. And then I think that's really where we add value, because you can oversave, and you actually can oversave, especially if you oversave in the wrong categories from a tax standpoint or some of the other aspects of access or beneficiaries or other elements that come into the planning. And so you can overshoot that target. But, of course, many of us are undersaving, in which case, I get it. If you're undersaving and you're undersaving, you don't have enough to retire, yes, just focus on saving. Save more. And if you save smartly and invest it smartly and everything else, take advantage of the match dollars that are available, hopefully through your employer, that's definitely going to help you, but it is not the same as a plan. Let us help you put a target out there on that field so you're not just flinging arrows.
Yeah. And some of the targets you can put closer to you.
Yeah.
If we're talking in, analogies like this with the bow and arrow range, some of those targets are going to be easier to hit. Mm-hmm. And we can help set those up. And then some of those targets are going to be mid-range and long range and very far out, which are going to be taking some time to actually be able to hit those targets. But with proper planning and strategy in place, you can make sure you hit all those targets in the sequence to hit them that makes sense for you. And that's something we help people with all the time.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like we're belaboring this analogy. I just came up with this today on this podcast
going.
as far as this conversation. But as I think about as you deal with it, you actually have multiple targets on the field. You might be saving for kids' college, just like you said. If you bring that targets closer, or saving for retirement. Maybe you and your spouse are not retiring at the same time, so you have two different targets on the field. And continuing with the analogy, it's like you're walking towards the targets, but you're getting smaller and smaller arrows. Because the closer you get to the target, the less impact your money's going to have, because you don't have as much compound interest. So it might get easier to see it. It might get easier to save, as far as save in the right direction. But the amount of impact you can really have is getting weaker and weaker and weaker as you get closer and closer to the targets. And pretty soon the target approaches you, and then it goes behind you, and it is what it is. And you're there, and you did what you did. And you can't shoot at it anymore. Now it's time to deal with what your score looks like, and that's I think that's accurate as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm always amazed by the comparisons and analogies that Tim comes up with. Thank you, Tim.
Stories. I'm a story collector.
You are.
Good stories and using them to really create clarity and better understanding of the situation. I think I'm a big fan of that. I hope that resonates for you. And as you think about it, if you've got your target, where your target is on the field, what that looks like, and how well you're shooting, are you hitting the bullseye over and over and over again? That's the difference between you having an amazing retirement experience or an amazing, financial planning experience for whatever other goals you might be saving for, versus not. And if you've got a blindfold on and you're just flinging arrows out there, you're probably on that scale of the 0 to 3 category, doing more hoping and saving than you are planning.
Yeah. I feel good about that one.
Yeah, me too. What
Ready
else
for
we
next? Income planning. So talk about saving. Let's talk about income planning. I think when we usually meet clients that come to us for assistance, they've done their savings or they're in the middle of it, and they usually build up enough money where they say, okay, what am I going to do with this savings, this bucket of money I've been saving, diligently on my own time? How do I turn this into reliable income? How does it play into my retirement experience? How do I draw from that money? How do taxes come into play? All that stuff is kind of encapsulated, if you will, in the retirement income planning section of this whole podcast, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, income planning is a big deal. And I think one of the other, I said there were two things I was going to mention earlier. Estate planning was one of them. The second thing I was going to mention really fits here in the income planning category, which is sequence of return risk. And that's just one example of the problems that happen when you don't have a good plan and you enter retirement. And if you're transitioning into income planning, as you visualize yourself now at that target and it's time to retire and you're going to draw from these accounts you've been aiming for, this entire accumulation phase is over. It's now time to distribute your money. Then how you distribute it's a very, very big deal. Not just from a tax standpoint, though. That's massive as well. How much pre-tax money are you going to take out? When do you turn on Social Security? What are the tax implications of that? Are you going to take any money from Roth accounts or not? Or do you have a LERP, and are you pulling tax-free income off of that? I mean, these are all things that will factor into your retirement strategy and when you turn these things on. If you have annuity contracts, are you optimizing the living benefits if you have living benefits on these contracts? These are the kinds of questions you have to answer in your planning when you're trying to determine how do you make the most out of your retirement income experience. And fundamentally, one of those issues, sequence of return risk. Google it, because we can't spend a whole podcast on it, but I also often refer to it as reverse dollar cost averaging. This is the gist of it is when you start spending money on a monthly basis out of an account that goes up and down every single day, you end up having to sell more shares of your investments when they're down to cover a fixed income stream and less shares when they're up, which means you're selling more at a lower value and less at a higher value, which is the opposite of what you want to be doing in general, right? We always want to buy low and sell high. You end up selling low and selling more low and selling less high, and that creates this problem in your retirement where you can run out of money a lot faster.
Yeah, and I think if we were to extrapolate from our listeners, especially those in retirement or close to retirement, probably one of their biggest fears is the fear of running out of money in retirement. Yeah. There are plenty of strategies to mitigate that happening and to totally avoid that happening, and we deal with that on a daily basis. But I do think that when it comes to the income planning aspect of retirement, sequence of returns risk or reverse dollar cost averaging, as Tim mentioned, is one of the biggest things that people haven't heard or don't realize exists, and is one of the most crucial talking points when we first talk to people about retirement income planning.
And we definitely have solutions for that. And I would say
there are
the two most common solutions that we use. We won't go into depth on them because we've talked about them in other podcasts, but you can always ask us more about them later. One is a bucket plan approach, and that's a way of handling sequence of return risk, which you're welcome to Google that and check that out as well. The second is shifting the risk of running out of money to an insurance company using annuities with living benefits. And I would say both of those approaches can work. If you love annuities, you can lean into that strategy. If you're not a big fan of annuities and you want to go in the managed money side of things, you can lean into the bucket planning strategy. But either way, you need to have a solution for dealing with reverse dollar cost averaging or sequence of return risk.
Yeah, well said. I mean, the other option is if you don't use any of those, you end up having to spend less when the markets are down and potentially spending more when the markets are up. And for a lot of retirees, it's not fun to have a varying degree of income. We like to know what our paycheck is and how much it's going to be. And especially as you get older, things get more expensive naturally with inflation. You don't want to have to be spending less as things are becoming more expensive over time. You want to have a good strategy for that too, which I guess could be in a whole nother subtopic for this, cost of living adjustments in retirement too.
Oh yeah. And people are living longer and everything else. It's funny. I remember some of my clients, they retired. Some clients actually literally called me. It's like, hey Jim, I've been referred to you and I just retired yesterday. So I guess it's time for me to talk to somebody. I'm like, I can help you. If you've already retired, you're trying to figure it out. That's like crisis retirement planning. We're already at the target. It's time to figure this out. It's easier if I have a little distance to the target, so I can help you shoot those arrows and make sure those arrows are really making a strong impact on the target before we get there. But I can absolutely help you. But it's funny, one of the questions that some of those clients will ask me too is as we get into our plan and they're retired a year or two, and it's like, Tim, all I really care about is, do I have to go back to work? And I'm like, if that's your plan because you don't have a plan because you're just saving and you're shooting arrows out there and you're like, well, if I don't have as much money, I'll just go back to work. Many of you might say that tongue in cheek, but that actually, there's people out there that really is their plan. And I just want to wake you up a little bit that getting a job after you've already retired and trying to get back in the workforce and having that job be financially remunerative enough that it's worth your time and that somebody wants to employ you in that kind of an environment is much, much more challenging than you might think it is. And I just strongly encourage you to not lean on that as your plan. If that's what you're using as your hope, that your plan, even if you own your own business and you're running everything and you're like, nobody can fire me, at some point things happen and you're just not physically capable or mentally capable of doing what you used to be able to do. We all keep getting older, man. My memory's not as good as it used to be. It's good. It's really good, especially when it's money stuff, and I've learned enough to keep it there, but it's not as good as it used to be. And, that's the way it is with everything as we get older. So that's why I hired this young guy over here, Tyler, so I can lean into his memory and his skill set.
Mine just keeps getting sharper and sharper. I'm like a samurai, just refining my sword every day.
When you stick the pencil in the pencil sharpener and you keep grinding, eventually it breaks. So
and it just gets down to a little nub. You just have a razor.
Oh, it's all good. He's sharp as a tack over here. So
likewise for you too, man. Come on.
Thanks. What else we got?
Taxes and retirement. Just take this one away, Tim. We know you want to talk about taxes.
All right. So there's 3 tax brackets that hit 3 different tax strategies. Let's see. How do I articulate this best? When you're building your wealth, you only have 2 taxable environments. You have income taxes, and then you have capital gains taxes, and they get taxed very differently. When you transition into retirement, you have 3, and that adds a whole new level of complexity because you have what's called a provisional income tax, which is whether or not your Social Security is taxable. So it could be 0, 50%, or 85%. Or, who knows? I mean, if there is a change to that this year, as has been proposed, that could change, but we don't know. At this time, it's 0, 50%, or 85%, and then that gets calculated into the income tax scenario, which also affects your capital gains tax scenario. So all I'm saying is it's complicated. There are 3 different sets of rules, and you've got to merge them all together when you analyze your taxes. And if the name of the game is to reduce your lifetime taxation to the bare legal minimum, that's what a good plan can help you do. And it's not likely that you're going to hit the target of lifetime minimum legal taxation by luck. It's going to take some planning.
That's extremely fair. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. Is that all you want to say about the taxes?
That's all I'm going to say on it, just because otherwise it's a friggin' rabbit hole and I could take an hour. Let's be real, I could take 6 hours.
Okay.
So if you want to know more about taxes and Tim's thoughts on retirement taxes, listen to some of my other podcasts. We got a lot more detail there. There's so much meat here. We got to
keep it tight. Okay. Healthcare and long-term care planning.
Got it.
So, listeners might be like, well, that doesn't really seem like a retirement conversation, but it is.
Yeah,
healthcare is one of your largest expenses in your entire lifetime, but especially in retirement, where maybe you don't have an employer that's helping cover the cost of that any longer. Or when it comes to long-term care, especially, that's a whole different category from health insurance. Health insurance doesn't pay for long-term care, at least not all of it or not most of it.
Yep.
And even when you were working, your employer probably didn't offer a long-term care insurance equivalent where they were helping out with that either. So long-term care is a whole nother category that probably hasn't been introduced to you at all up to this point in your life whenever you start to look into that realm and start to have that discussion. So
you might be thinking too when Tyler says that, I've seen this confusion occur a lot of times. You might be thinking, oh, my employer has that. They have that long-term care thing. I got that good. Make sure you're not thinking about long-term disability insurance. Long-term disability insurance is a beautiful, very important thing, and many employers have that for you. What that does is replaces your income if you're disabled while you're working up until you would have hit typically age 65 or 67 years old. Completely different from long-term care. Long-term care insurance covers the expenses associated with the declining ability to function in terms of the activities of daily living as we get older. And that can be, that can be in a nursing home environment, or it can be in your own home with somebody coming in and helping you take care of yourself. And that cognitive impairment can also kick in with Alzheimer's or dementia and cause some of those issues to trigger as well. The cost associated with long-term care is extremely high. And one way of addressing that cost is to look at long-term care insurance. And that's one of the things that Tyler's talking about. Definitely requires some planning. It's not just going to happen. Nobody's going to be like, oh, you have coverage. Congratulations. Like, you have to actually look into it, apply for it, think about it, and how, figure it, strategize for it. And then the other elements of healthcare, Medicare kicks in at 65. So if you retire before 65, you're going to pay out of pocket for a little while. And after 65, you've got the Medicare coming in, but it's not free. You still have to pay the Part A and typically the Part B or a Medicare Advantage plan. You look into that, or Medigap policies. And we don't do all of the health insurance elements that we're referring to here, but we have some excellent connections with people who do, because we make sure that our clients are taken care of in all these aspects, whether we do it personally or we work together with other professionals who handle the parts we don't handle. We want to make sure our clients are fully planned for.
Yeah. Yeah, this is especially one of those things where, if we're going back to the arrow and the darts and all that analogy, if you will, that you don't want the target to pass you on this one, especially. If the target passes you and you'd have no more opportunities to shoot the arrows at the targets, when it comes to health insurance and long-term care insurance, you might never have the opportunity to do anything with it again. What I mean by that is you didn't get the insurance, and then you have a medical crisis happen, and then you can never get it again because you won't qualify for it. So this is really one of the things you want to be proactive about, not reactive when it comes to something like this.
And that applies to life insurance too. I mean, if you have loved ones that you care for, if you have a significant other that you want to make sure is okay, the lower of the two Social Securities between the two of you is going to go away if one of you passes away, and the taxes go up. That survivor, be it widow or widower, is going to be single with a single taxation bracket, which means they actually could pay more taxes than you paid together with less income. And I mean that in true dollars. That's the way the math can work. So knowing what the survivorship benefits are on your pensions, as well as the continued income stream opportunities that may or may not exist for your spouse, those are all very, very important. And life insurance can play a real feature in helping you protect your spouse if something happens, when something happens to you. Like, we haven't figured out how to avoid death. At some point, we're all going to die. That's the way it is. I wish that wasn't the case, but it is the case. We just don't know when, and consequently, we need to have a plan.
Death and taxes.
Yeah, the two certainties.
That's right.
Well, this is morbid and depressing. Let's move on.
Let's move on to a very fun topic: RMDs and withdrawal strategies.
Oh, yes, RMDs and withdrawal strategies. Okay, so RMDs require minimum distributions. They kick in when you're 73 at this point, and I think they're going to be going to 75 here in the near future. So depending on your age, that year in which you hit those ages, or if you're already above those ages, you have to take out a required minimum distribution, RMD, which is a minimum amount you have to take out of your pre-tax qualified retirement plan accounts. That includes 401ks, 403bs, SEPs, Simples, KEOs, traditional IRAs, any kind of qualified retirement plan where you haven't paid taxes on that money before. The IRS says, hey, you're getting into your 70s. We want you to take some money out because we want to collect the taxes on it, and that's what they make you do. And if you don't do that, we're going to tax you anyway, a big penalty tax. And that's the gist of how RMDs work. Yeah. So strategizing to make sure you don't pay that penalty tax is a part of what we do on a regular basis too. Again, it's all part of that overall strategy of how do we pay the least amount of lifetime income taxation legally possible. And making sure you optimize your RMD strategy is a critical element of that.
Yeah. I feel like it's become more and more common for us lately where we have clients that have tried to avoid touching their retirement accounts for as long as they could because maybe they have a great Social Security and pension benefit or otherwise, and they don't need to necessarily touch that big bucket of pre-tax money that they've accumulated. And then it gets to their RMD age and they say, well, I don't want to have to pay these RMDs. That's a lot of money to the IRS and to the Oregon Department of Revenue. And, what are my options for avoiding that or minimizing it? And at that point, it's very difficult to plan around minimizing that. This is where, if we're talking back to the arrows on the range, you want that target to be as far away as possible when you start talking about this type of a thing.
That's right. If we see it coming, we can make an impact with those arrows.
Yes.
And that includes, bracket bumping strategies, Roth conversions, recognizing income earlier, or maybe you've even identified that, remember, every asset you have is a live on or leave on asset. Either you're going to spend it during your lifetime or your heirs are going to get it and they'll spend it. And if you've determined you have enough live-on assets, you're fine, and you have some extra assets that are likely to be leave-on assets, things you're going to pass on to your heirs, then you might say, hey, what if we decrease the tax consequences as much as possible for the heirs and optimize the wealth that you're going to pass behind and leave behind to those heirs? And that might involve seeing that RMD target, using maybe some of those RMDs to repurpose those dollars towards a better asset that could be left behind.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. Legacy planning.
Yeah, I think that ties in.
That ties in.
Yeah.
Actually,
So I think
nicely.
legacy planning is right on point there. Just keeping those estate taxes at the legal minimum as well, and giving consideration to your state estate taxes. If you're in the state of Washington listening to this, it's a $2 million exclusion per person, roughly. Oregon, it's a $1 million exclusion per person, and many of the other states have their own rules. So if you're in another state listening to this, because clearly everybody around the planet listens to the Clear Money Talk podcast. If you're outside the United States, by the way, we know a lot of stuff about international stuff too, but fundamentally, this is primarily U.S.-based discussions with a lot of the feedback that we're having here. But anywhere in the United States, all of this content, I think, is greatly applicable for you. Just pay attention to whatever your state's estate tax consequences are, and make sure that you're not going to get surprised with, or your heirs aren't going to get surprised with massive tax implications. And then make sure your beneficiaries are positioned the way you want them to be. Constantly overlooked issue is people will create trusts and not fund them, or their beneficiaries are wrong or old. We've done several other podcasts on that topic too. So just pay attention to it.
We have. All right, Tim, tell me why hope is not a strategy for planning for retirement. Can I just hope it's going to work out?
Yeah, no, not the best strategy. It's funny. Crystal and I, so my wife Crystal, we were at I don't know, it was a vacation. I think it was down in Cozumel or something, probably like 12 years ago. And the little turtles were going out into the ocean, and they gave us the little turtles to
release into the
wild, into the ocean. And one of the turtles' names was Star, and the other was Hope. And to this day, we talk back and forth about Hope and Star and whether or not they survived the sharks in the ocean, or whether they're living. Or Crystal and I talking about how ours, each one's theoretically doing better. Of course, we have no idea what's really happening to them. But as much as Hope and Star are a wonderful story, hope is just a story. It's not a plan. It's a story you're telling yourself that you believe is going to be okay. And I love hope. I love Star too, but I love hope, and I think it's an important thing to have in there. We can still have hope, but we also need to have a plan, because otherwise you're going to be really disappointed when you find out that target isn't where you thought it was going to be, because you didn't move it and you didn't strategize around it. You just hoped it would be there.
Yeah. Having a plan, no matter the in-depthness of it, is important, and reviewing that plan too is important. Just because you have a plan doesn't mean it doesn't need to be reviewed, refined as markets change, as taxes change, as your life changes with different events. Like, those are all opportunities that the plan might need to be adjusted. So just account for, yes, having a plan is good, but making adjustments and tweaks to it and reviewing it routinely is also as equally as important.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. We got to hit the just the answers.
You got to hit just the answer.
Oh, yeah. I got to hit
ready?
just the answer. All right.
I'll tee you up, man.
All right. Let's do it.
All right. Just the answer for those that just want the answer. Are you planning for retirement or just hoping it works out? Tim, we talked about the difference between saving and planning.
Okay. We'll hit it one bullet at a time really quick. The just the answers. We got about, 7 or 8 bullets, 6 or 7 bullets, something like that.
We'll get through.
So the difference between saving and planning, fundamentally, in a quick just the answer capacity, saving is really just throwing money into your accounts on a regular basis without any real target in mind. So have a target in mind. We used a great analogy earlier in the show of being on an archery field with no targets out there, and you're just shooting arrows as far as saving. If you want to actually have a plan, you need to have visibility on the target, shoot the arrows at the target, and as you're walking down the field, because that's the nature as we get older, you'll have a greater impact the further you are away from the target, because of the power of compound interest. As you get closer to the targets, it's as if your arrows get smaller.
Mm-hmm. We talked about income planning for retirement.
Yeah, and then with income planning, there's so many things to consider, including sequence of return risk and what strategies you're going to use for distribution, minimizing lifetime legal taxation, as much as possible. A huge part of that discussion. We covered a lot of good meat and ground there. Mm-hmm. And then just make sure the income is going to be the amount you want it to be and turned on from all the right places. And then it's going to be there for the ones you love. So if you have a spouse or a significant other you're trying to take care of, make sure that the income streams for the survivor of the two of you are also going to be adequate.
Yep. And we talked about taxes in retirement as well.
Yeah, that's that whole minimizing lifetime taxation. That's definitely factored into the strategy throughout. Thinking about the three different taxes, tax kind of calculations that come into play in retirement. You have income taxes, capital gains taxes, and the provisional income tax related to how much Social Security is taxed. All of those need to get factored in.
Yep. And we also talked about healthcare and long-term care planning in retirement.
And long-term care is different from long-term disability insurance, so don't think you have it unless you've verified for sure. Long-term disability is great. Many employers take care of it. Long-term care is different. Have a plan for that. And then healthcare at Medicare qualifying at 65. Start to look at Medicare Advantage, Medigap policies, your other choices. If you retire pre-65, pay attention to that extra expense because Medicare is not there for you yet.
Mm-hmm. RMDs and withdrawal strategies.
And then the required minimum distributions with RMDs that kick in at 73, or if you're a little bit younger at 75 later on for you, you'll have to start taking money out. The sooner you strategize that income tax ramifications, you will be paying those income taxes, or your heirs will. So how do you do that in the lowest possible total expense over time? Things like bracket bumping, Roth conversions, or even just bracket bumping early distributions, or reconverting some of that pre-tax money into better after-tax legacy money. Can be a big part of the planning that can go into effect.
Yep. Legacy planning and why hope is not a strategy.
Got it. And then legacy planning and why hope is not a strategy. So legacy planning, again, pay attention to the estate tax consequences in the state that you might be in. Oregon's everything over $1 million per person. Washington's everything over $2 million roughly per person. And pay attention to the other state. Whatever state you pass away in is where you're going to be dealing with those estate tax consequences. And then hope is not a plan. As much as I enjoyed sharing the story of the turtles my wife and I released into the wild with Hope and Star, fundamentally, hope is just a story you're telling yourself. It is not a plan, and it's better to have hope and a plan than it is to just have hope.
Well said. You ready for some trivia?
Yeah, let's
All
go.
right. Okay. Which U.S. president introduced the first federal income tax to help fund the Civil War?
Wow.
I didn't realize that's where income taxes started, was to fund the Civil War.
So if we
I guess it makes sense.
We could have all just got along. We wouldn't have income taxes
Basically.
today.
Basically.
That might be an oversimplification.
Yeah.
But, wow. I don't know. I apologize.
You want some multiple
my
choice?
history of my knowledge of historical presidents is not as good as it probably should be. So I'll take some multiple choice.
Okay. We got Thomas Jefferson, Ulysses S. Grant, Abraham Lincoln, or Andrew Jackson.
So I can visualize all four of those presidents quite clearly, and that's pretty cool. So I'm seeing kind of it's kind of who they are, and I have so many positive feelings for Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Jackson, mostly with Jackson because he's on the 20. But Ulysses S. Grant, I don't have any negative feelings about him. That's really cool, but I don't have the same positive vibes that I do for the other three. I have a feeling it's because somewhere along the way I may have learned that maybe he did the income tax thing. So I'm going to go with Grant, but I don't know for sure if that's the case. But if it is, maybe that justifies that slight tickle in the back of my head.
No, I think he came along too much later.
Too late?
in life.
Well, that makes sense. Who was it?
Abraham Lincoln. So,
oh, man, I can't feel bad about Lincoln like that.
Lincoln introduced it in 1861 to fund war expenses, a precursor to our modern tax system, as we know today.
Abraham, what were you doing? All right, so be it. It's what it is.
Here we
All
are.
right. Now, thanks. That's good trivia. Like I said, I don't know everything.
That's right. Well, thank you for your minutes and spending time with Tim and I on the podcast. It's always fun for us. If you have any further questions, check out our other podcasts. Also, give us a call if you'd like, 503-579-1000. Check out our website, www.clearfp.com.
Just three W's.
Just three W's there. Anything else,
No,
Tim?
thank you for joining us on Clear Money Talk today. Have a great one.
Tim Clairmont and Tyler Andrews are investment advisor representatives offering securities and advisory services through Ceteri Advisor Networks, LLC, a broker-dealer and registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Ceteri is under separate ownership from any other named entity. The views depicted in this material are for information purposes only and are not necessarily those of Ceteri Advisor Networks, LLC. They should not be considered specific advice or recommendations for any individual. For a comprehensive review of your personal situation, always consult with a tax or legal advisor. Neither Ceteri Advisor Networks, LLC, nor any of its representatives representatives may give legal or tax advice. All investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will be successful. Examples referenced are hypothetical only and do not represent the actual performance of any particular investments. Converting from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. A Roth IRA offers tax-free withdrawals on taxable contributions. To qualify for the tax-free and penalty-free withdrawal or earnings, a Roth IRA must be in place for at least 5 tax years, and the distribution must take place after age 59.5 or due to death, disability, or a first-time home purchase up to a $10,000 lifetime maximum. Depending on state law, Roth IRA distributions may be subject to state taxes. Distributions from traditional IRAs and employer-sponsored retirement plans are taxed as ordinary income and, if taken prior to reaching age 59.5, may be subject to an additional 10% IRS tax penalty. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks and charges, and expenses of mutual funds and ETFs carefully before investing. The prospectus, which contains this and other information about the funds and ETFs, can be obtained directly from the company or from your financial professional. The prospectus should be read carefully before investing or sending money. A diversified portfolio does not assure a profit or protect against loss in a declining market. Dollar cost averaging will not guarantee a profit or protect you from loss, but may reduce your average cost per share in a fluctuating market. Investors cannot invest directly in indexes. The performance of any index is not indicative of the performance of any investment and does not take into account the effects of inflation and the fees and expenses associated with investing. Although it is possible to have guaranteed income for life with a fixed annuity, there is no assurance that this income will keep up with inflation. There is a surrender charge imposed generally during the first 5 to 7 years or during the rate guarantee period. There is a surrender charge imposed generally during the first 5 to 7 years that you own the contract. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may result in a 10% IRS tax penalty in addition to any ordinary income tax. The guarantee of the annuity is backed by the financial strength of the underlying insurance company. Investment sub-account values will fluctuate with changes in market conditions. An investment in a variable annuity involves investment risk, including possible loss of principal. Variable annuities are designed for long-term investing. The contract, when redeemed, may be worth more or less than the total amount invested. Variable annuities are subject to insurance-related charges, including mortality and expense charges, administrative fees, and the expenses associated with the underlying subaccounts. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks, and charges and expenses of the variable annuity carefully before investing. The prospectus contains this and other information about the variable annuity. Contact Clear Financial Partners at info@clearfp.com or 503-579-1000 to obtain a prospectus, which should be read carefully before investing or sending money. The cost and availability of life insurance depend on factors such as age, health, and the type and amount of insurance purchased. Before implementing a strategy involving life insurance, it would be prudent to make sure that you are insurable by having the policy approved. As with most financial decisions, there are expenses associated with the purchase of life insurance. Policies commonly have mortality and expense charges. In addition, if a policy is surrendered prematurely, there may be surrender charges and income tax implications. Clear Financial Partners is located at 15573 Bangi Road, Suite 100, Lake Oswego, Oregon 97035. For more information, please call us at 503-579-1000.